Before we jump into this, I want to pre-frame something here. This is all subjective. All of this is just my opinion. I feel it's an opinion that has some weight behind it, but it's an opinion nonetheless. Some things you may disagree with, and that's cool. That is okay. Let me know who you think is the scariest character in Mortal Kombat and why, and we can discuss that in the comments. Also, the most scary does not mean the most powerful. We're going to go by the dark alley scenario. If you're walking down a dark alley and you see someone walking towards you, would you be frightened of that person? So for example, Liu Kang is most likely more powerful than most people that we're going to talk about in this video. But if he's walking by me, by no means would I consider that person scary. Some of the characters are scary on paper, but the execution of the character is so cool, they kind of lose that frightening aspect to them. So for example, zombies are inherently disturbing, but I feel like zombie Liu Kang isn't scary. It's just so cool that this martial arts champion's, his body wasn't able to rest after being murdered and returns to the living. The idea of lizard people masquerading as humans has been a conspiracy theory for as long as time itself, I feel. But for whatever reason, Reptile doesn't really have that fearful aura for me, even though as a kid in MK2, when he would rip off his face, or what I would imagine him ripping off his face, always did kind of creep me out a little bit. The same goes for characters like Noob Saibot. A near invincible giant humanoid dragon is a frightening concept, but Onaga is just so awesome that he seems less scary and more cool, if that makes sense. Sindel is based on a banshee, something akin to ghosts and witches in folklore, but there are so few recent banshee stories that I feel like people don't make that connection, and she kind of loses that fear factor. With that being said, characters that I feel are horror themed but are too cool to be scary, I would say are, like I mentioned, Zombie Liu Kang, Reptile, Noob Saibot, Sindel, Onaga, Ermac, and Havoc. Now, on to the characters I feel are horror themed and still have a scary aspect to them.
Baraka.
The face is enough to put Baraka on this list. He looks demonic. The lack of hair, his eyes, and the protruding teeth, I'm sure would make any younger sibling have a nightmare if they were to watch you play MK late at night. When I was a teenager, I used to play Trilogy at a friend's house, and we were banned from fighting at the bottom of the pit, that stage in particular, and using Baraka for fear that his mom would walk by and deem the game too much for us to play in her house. A true sign of a frightening design.
Melina.
This should be a no-brainer. Melina's on the list for a lot of the reasons Baraka is. But the fact that she can deceive you and actually appear normal, only to reveal one aspect of her that makes her monstrous, almost makes her more scary than Baraka, for me anyway. Also, look at this run. If you're in an alley and she's running towards you like this, there's no way your pants wouldn't be just a little bit wet. Devora. Body horror is a subgenre of horror fiction that focuses on the unnatural transformation, degradation, and destruction of the human body, often exploring themes of decay, disease, deformity, and mutilation. Almost nobody on the MK cast embodies this more than Devora. From being able to poison you with a stab of her spider-like leg, to implanting larvae inside of you to grow and eat their way out of you, kind of like the xenomorph. I mean, Devora is complete nightmare fuel. A subterranean behemoth with 4 arms that is half man and half dragon that eats people. We forget that he eats people. He's straight out of like a a B-rated horror movie. I mean, just look at his lair. The skeletal remains of the past victim that he has just hung up there, and being surrounded by glowing eyes watching you absolutely reads like the domain of a horror movie monster.
Motaro.
Much like Goro, a lot of the fright factor of Motaro comes from his stature. If I saw a huge, muscular centaur walking towards me, I feel like it would be so surreal and unnatural. I'm sure I'd be frozen in fright.
Shao Kahn.
A warrior with magical abilities that match his muscular stature. Nobody is messing with Shao Kahn, not on sight anyway. I've heard the argument that Mortal Kombat 3 didn't feel as imaginative because it takes place in Earthrealm as opposed to Shang Tsung's Island or Outworld, and that the MK3 stages just seem mundane in comparison. But if you really take notice of the stages, one thing that they all lack is people. Every stage is devoid of anyone watching the fights or just being in the background. When you watch the attract mode clips of Mortal Kombat 3, we find out that with a gesture, Shao Kahn stripped all the life, except for the champions chosen by Raiden, but he stripped all life on Earth of their souls. In a moment, just like that, everyone on Earth dead. It really paints the barren stages in a different light once you realize the circumstances that Shao Kahn is this global threat that can murder everyone on a planet with a thought. Plus, these images of Shao are just dripping in horror. Dramen. He's an Oni, which is a sort of demon, and I mean that should be enough, but he obviously smells. I mean, that alone isn't scary, but it's the idea that he's this demon that wears this mask. Humans are wired to be creeped out by things in which we can't determine the intent. So this is why we get creeped out by things like clowns and why dolls put us on edge. At a glance, we can't tell if it's happy or frightened or angry. And I feel like Dramen lands in this category. If Dramen is walking towards you, you don't know if he's angry, if he's on edge, if he's ready to attack, or even if he's looking at you at all. All these things just make Dramen have this air of creepiness to him. Meat. Similar to Dramen, I feel like one wouldn't be able to fully comprehend the intent of Meat. Also, the fact that Meat himself has lost all sense of himself makes him really unpredictable. And obviously, I mean, the fact that the man has no skin whatsoever kind of puts him in the body horror section of being scary. So I think Meat absolutely fits the bill for something that you would see in a horror movie. And the scariest character in Mortal Kombat is Cetrion. Don't leave, do not X out of this video. Hear me out, trust me. Cetrion is weird looking. I get it, with the different color skin and whatnot. But that's not what makes her a scary character. Or in my opinion, that's not what makes her the scariest character. What I feel really makes her scary is what makes a character like Freddy Krueger scary. And that's their mind and their imagination. In Mortal Kombat 11, every character's ending is a what-if scenario in the case that they would obtain the Hourglass, which allows them to restart time to the beginning of the universe and control events to ensure a certain outcome. If Cetrion has the Hourglass, she tries to give us peace, but when that doesn't work, what she does is pretty horrific.
Though I first denied their truth, eventually I realized the wisdom of Liu Kang's words. There is virtue greater than my mother's desired balance. Good must be allowed to flourish. But no matter how I reshaped time, rooting out evil proved impossible. Though freed from want, mortals still killed each other. Divided by realm and race, they easily justified their hate. Hubris, greed, envy. To appreciate my gifts, mortal sins must be cleansed. Which is why I baptize the realms with fire. For eons, mortals will battle evil, eventually achieving victory. And when they emerge from the darkness, they will be humbled, eager to embrace the light.
Unleashing a horde of nightmare creatures to murder the living for eons is worse than any quick death any of the other characters we discuss could deliver. Many humans will be born into this conflict and die during the time of these monsters, never knowing peace, always looking over their shoulder, and fearing not only for their own well-being, but for the well-being of their children and their children's children. The hellscape Cetrion unleashes on the living is a universal threat, stretching everywhere, all the realms, so it leaves everyone nowhere to escape. It's a terrifying thought. Not only because of the monsters hunting humans, but also perhaps because it's ultimately what humanity deserves. Who do you think is the scariest character in Mortal Kombat? Of course, I mean strictly Mortal Kombat characters, so no guest characters that show up in MK games. Let me know who and why in the comments. If you made it this far in the video, you can
Acknowledge me
by hitting the like button. This is a small act for you, but this allows for videos like this to get more attention, and it is very much appreciated. You can hit confirm that into the subscribe button and join
the dozens
of ShinFit subscribers. I post regularly, and I do a lot of live streams as well as community posts, so to make sure that you catch everything as it comes out, go ahead and hit that sub button. If you're into gaming content, there's a video on screen now that I'm sure you're gonna love, but more importantly than everything else, don't get beat up out there.